Guess what? Where on earth would you find a country that measures its success, not by economic output, not by military strength, not by technological advancement, but by how happy its citizens feel, in some progressive Scandinavian nation, in a wealthy European microstate, perhaps in a utopian community founded by idealistic philosophers? No, all wrong. The only nation on earth that has officially replaced gross domestic product with gross national happiness is a tiny Himalayan kingdom that most people have never visited and many cannot locate on a map. That kingdom is Bhutan, and that is merely the first of many secrets this hidden land holds. When most people imagine the Himalayas, they think of Mount Everest, of Nepal, of mountaineers battling extreme conditions to reach the world's highest peaks. They picture remote monasteries, prayer flags fluttering in thin air, and ancient traditions preserved by isolation. But Bhutan offers something different. Here is a nation that was never colonized by any foreign power in its recorded history, where television and the internet arrived only in 1999, where plastic bags have been banned nationwide since 1999, and tobacco sales are illegal, where every building by law must be constructed in traditional architectural style. A country with no traffic lights in its capital city, where the national sport is archery, and competitions involve singing, dancing, and good-natured heckling of opponents, where more than 70% of the land is covered by protected forest, enshrined in the Constitution. This is not a fairy tale. This is Bhutan, a kingdom that deliberately chose a different path, a nation that asked what human society should actually be striving for, and decided the answer was not wealth, but well-being. Welcome to Travel Vibes, the Thunder Dragon Kingdom. The name Bhutan itself carries meaning that hints at the nation's character. In the Jangka language, the official tongue of Bhutan, the country is called Drukgyal, which translates as Land of the Thunder Dragon. The Thunder Dragon appears on the national flag, clutching jewels in its claws, representing the wealth and perfection of the nation. According to legend, the name derives from the sound of thunder echoing through the mountain valleys, interpreted as the voices of dragons. This mythological connection between natural phenomena and spiritual significance pervades Bhutanese culture. Geographically, Bhutan occupies a sliver of Himalayan terrain between two giants. To the north lies Tibet, now the Tibet Autonomous Region of China. To the south, east, and west lies India, which dominates Bhutan's foreign relations and security arrangements. The country measures approximately 38,394 square kilometers, roughly the size of Switzerland. Its population is estimated at around 780,000, making it one of the least populous nations in Asia. Elevation ranges from approximately 200 meters in the southern lowlands to over 7,500 meters at the peak of Gangkar Puensum, the highest unclimbed mountain in the world. This dramatic vertical geography creates distinct ecological zones within a small territory. Subtropical forests in the south give way to temperate valleys in the central regions, which in turn yield to alpine meadows and permanent snow at the highest elevations. The Buddhist foundation, Buddhism, is not merely the majority religion in Bhutan. It is the organizing principle of society itself. The Vajrayana tradition of Buddhism, also known as Tantric Buddhism, arrived in Bhutan in the 8th century, traditionally credited to the legendary figure Guru Rinpoche, also known as Padmasambhava. According to tradition, Guru Rinpoche flew to Bhutan on the back of a tigress, subdued local demons, and established Buddhism in the region. The spot where he is said to have landed and meditated became Toksang Monastery, better known as the Tiger's Nest, now Bhutan's most iconic landmark. Over subsequent centuries, Buddhism became inseparable from Bhutanese identity. Monasteries were established throughout the valleys. Monks became influential figures in governance and education. Religious festivals structured the calendar. Buddhist principles shaped law, ethics, and daily practice. Today, approximately 75% of Bhutanese follow Buddhism, primarily the Drukpa Kagyu school. A significant Hindu minority, concentrated in the southern lowlands, comprises most of the remainder. The interweaving of religious and civil authority continues, with monks playing important roles in state ceremonies and religious institutions receiving substantial government support. This is not the casual, compartmentalized religion familiar to much of the modern world. In Bhutan, Buddhism shapes everything from architecture to agriculture, from the treatment of animals to the management of natural resources. The isolation that preserved throughout the centuries. When colonizing powers divided South Asia among themselves, Bhutan remained independent. The British Empire, which colonized India and established influence across the subcontinent, never conquered Bhutan. Border conflicts occurred, most notably the Duar War of 1864 to 1865, but Bhutan maintained its sovereignty, eventually signing a treaty that regulated but did not extinguish its independence. When China absorbed Tibet in 1950, Bhutan suddenly found itself sharing a border with an expansive power rather than a traditional Buddhist neighbor. This geopolitical shift brought Bhutan closer to India for security purposes, but the kingdom continued to chart its own course. More remarkably, Bhutan remained largely closed to the outside world until the 1960s. There were no roads connecting Bhutan to the outside world until 1962. There was no national currency until 1974. Tourism was not permitted until 1974, and then only in strictly limited numbers. This isolation was not merely geographic. It was chosen. Bhutanese leaders looked at the changes sweeping through neighboring countries, the cultural disruption, the environmental degradation, the loss of traditional ways, and decided to proceed differently. The result is a society that preserved traditions, languages, and practices that vanished elsewhere. When Bhutan finally opened, it did so on its own terms, seeking to control the pace and nature of change rather than being overwhelmed by it. Gross national happiness in 1972. The fourth king of Bhutan, Jigme Singye Wangchuck, made a statement that would define his nation's global image. Gross national happiness, he declared, was more important than gross domestic product. What began as a philosophical observation evolved over decades into a comprehensive policy framework. The Bhutanese government developed detailed metrics for measuring national well-being across 9 domains: living standards, health, education, governance, ecological diversity, time use, psychological well-being, cultural resilience, and community vitality. Every few years, extensive surveys assess the population's status across these dimensions. The results inform policy decisions with the stated goal of increasing the percentage of Bhutanese who are happy or deeply happy, according to the metrics. Critics note that Bhutan remains a developing nation with real poverty, limited infrastructure, and significant emigration of young people seeking opportunities abroad. The happiness framework, some argue, serves partly as effective international branding for a small country seeking attention and tourism revenue. Supporters counter that the framework represents a genuine attempt to measure what matters, that focusing exclusively on economic growth produces environmental destruction, social fragmentation, and the unhappiness visible in wealthy nations worldwide. Whatever one's view, Bhutan's experiment offers a thought-provoking alternative. In a world where nations compete for GDP rankings, one small kingdom asked whether the competition itself might be misguided. A different kind of capital. Thimphu is the capital and largest city of Bhutan, home to approximately 115,000 people in the greater metropolitan area. By global standards, this is tiny. Many neighborhoods in major world cities contain more people than Bhutan's entire capital. Yet Thimphu has grown rapidly by Bhutanese standards, transforming from a small town to a genuine urban center within living memory. The contrast with religious monuments in heavily touristed destinations is notable. At the memorial Chorten, the sacred function takes clear precedence over the touristic one. Each weekend, a large open market convenes along the banks of the Wangsi Chu River, offering an opportunity to see Bhutanese daily life beyond the tourist itinerary. Vendors from surrounding villages bring produce, meat, handicrafts, and household goods. Buyers bargain in Janka and other local languages. The atmosphere is social as well as commercial, with market day serving as an occasion for rural people to connect with the capital. The products available reflect Bhutanese foodways and material culture. Chilies, the foundation of Bhutanese cuisine, appear in multiple varieties. Yak products, including butter and cheese, arrive from highland communities. Handwoven textiles showcase patterns and techniques passed through generations. For visitors accustomed to the carefully controlled tourism experience, the weekend market offers something less curated. This is not a cultural performance. It is commerce, conducted as it would occur whether foreigners were present or not. The Valley of History at the Paro Valley, located in western Bhutan, serves as the gateway for most visitors to the kingdom. Paro Airport, one of only a handful of airports in the country, is famously challenging. Surrounded by peaks reaching over 5,500 meters, the runway requires pilots to navigate sharp turns through mountain valleys on approach. Only a small number of pilots are certified to land here, and flights operate only in daylight hours with good visibility. The valley itself is considered the most historically significant region in Bhutan. Early Buddhist temples, ancient defensive structures, and some of the kingdom's most important religious sites cluster within its relatively compact terrain. Parojang, also known as Rinpungjang, dominates the valley floor. Built in 1646, it remains one of the finest examples of Bhutanese architecture. Its tiered walls and courtyards featured in numerous films and photographs. Like other jongs, it continues to function as both monastic institution and administrative center. The Paro Valley was traditionally one of the wealthiest regions of Bhutan, its fertile bottomland producing rice and other crops that supported substantial populations. The grand farmhouses scattered through the valley, some dating back centuries, reflect this historical prosperity. Taksang, the tiger's nest clinging to a sheer cliff face 900 meters above the Paro Valley floor. Taksang Monastery is almost certainly the most photographed location in Bhutan. The site's origins connect to the foundational myth of Bhutanese Buddhism. Guru Rinpoche is said to have flown here on the back of a tigress, landing on the cliff ledge to meditate in a cave. The cave remains the spiritual heart of the complex, accessible only to those who make the pilgrimage up the mountain. The temple buildings visible today date primarily from the late 17th century, though the site was sacred long before construction began. A devastating fire in 1998 destroyed much of the complex, but reconstruction was completed by 2005, restoring the monastery to its previous appearance. Reaching the Tiger's Nest requires a hike of approximately 2 to 3 hours each way, depending on fitness level. The trail climbs steeply through blue pine forest, offering periodic glimpses of the monastery before the final dramatic approach. The last section crosses a waterfall-fed stream and descends briefly before climbing stone steps carved into the cliff face. Visitors remove shoes before entering the temple complex, passing through multiple shrines and prayer halls decorated with murals, sculptures, and butter lamps. For many visitors, the pilgrimage to Taksang represents the emotional peak of a Bhutan journey. The combination of physical effort, dramatic scenery, and spiritual atmosphere creates an experience that frequently exceeds expectations. Kayuchu Lakang, at the opposite end of the Poro Valley, stands one of Bhutan's most ancient temples. Kayuchu Lakang dates to the 7th century, making it among the oldest Buddhist structures in Bhutan. According to tradition, it was built by the Tibetan king Songtsen Gampo, as part of a campaign to pin down a demoness whose body was believed to span the Himalayan region. The temple complex has been expanded over the centuries, with significant additions by notable Bhutanese rulers. Despite these modifications, the original 7th century temple remains intact, its sanctity enhanced by its extreme age. Orange trees fill the courtyard, their fruit offering blessings to pilgrims who receive pieces from attending monks. The interior features ancient statues, butter lamps burning continuously, and the accumulated patina of over 13 centuries of worship. Visiting Kayusu Lakang after Taksang offers a different kind of experience. The Tiger's Nest impresses through dramatic location. Kaichu Lakang impresses through time, the weight of continuous devotion spanning a millennium, and more. Drukgyal further up the Poro Valley. The ruins of a once mighty fortress recall the military history that outsiders often overlook in favor of Bhutan's peaceful image. Drukgyal was constructed in 1649 to commemorate Bhutan's victory over Tibetan invaders. For centuries, it served as a defense against northern threats. Its position controlling the pass leading toward Tibet. A fire in 1951 destroyed much of the structure, and unlike other damaged Yungs, Drukgyal was not immediately rebuilt. The ruins remained for decades, a picturesque reminder of impermanence in a land deeply influenced by Buddhist teachings on the same theme. Restoration work has now begun, with plans to reconstruct the Zhang while preserving elements of its ruined state. The project reflects Bhutan's ongoing negotiation between preservation and development. On clear days, the 7,326-meter peak of Jomolhari, one of Bhutan's sacred mountains, is visible from Drukgyal. Climbing the mountain is forbidden, not because of technical difficulty, but because Bhutanese belief holds that the peaks are homes of protective deities who should not be disturbed. The farming valleys beyond the major monuments. The Poro Valley contains traditional farming communities that continue practices little changed for generations. Rice paddies cover the valley floor, their cultivation following rhythms dictated by season and water availability. Farmhouses built from rammed earth and timber rise several stories, with livestock sheltered on the ground floor and family quarters above. Many tourists experience these communities through homestay programs that allow overnight stays with local families. Meals typically feature traditional dishes, including imadachi, the national dish of chilies cooked in cheese sauce. Evenings may include conversations about daily life, agricultural challenges, and the changes visitors from modern societies bring. These interactions offer perspectives unavailable at monuments and museums. The stories of individual farmers, their connections to land worked by ancestors, their hopes and concerns for children growing up in a rapidly changing society. These humanize a country that could otherwise remain a collection of scenic photographs. The old capital. Until 1955, Punakha served as the capital of Bhutan, and it remains the winter residence of the monastic body. Located at a lower elevation than Thimphu, Punakha enjoys warmer weather that made it preferable for year-round habitation before modern heating systems became available. The valley is famous for its agricultural productivity and natural beauty. The journey from Thimphu to Punakha crosses the Dochula Pass at approximately 3,100 meters elevation. On clear days, this pass offers views of the eastern Himalayan peaks, including several mountains exceeding 7,000 meters. A collection of 108 memorial chortens, built in 2005, provides a foreground for photographs that have become iconic representations of Bhutan. Descending from the pass, the road winds through dense forests before emerging into the Punakha Valley. The transition from alpine to subtropical vegetation is dramatic, reflecting the extreme elevation differences within short horizontal distances. Punakha, at the confluence of the Amokachu and Phokachu rivers, stands what many consider the most beautiful Zhang in Bhutan. Punakha was built in 1637 by Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyal, the unifier of Bhutan who established the political and religious system that persists in modified form today. The Zhang served as the administrative center and capital for centuries, witnessing coronations, invasions, and the full sweep of Bhutanese history. The structure has suffered damage from fire and flood on multiple occasions, most recently from glacial lake outburst floods in the 1990s. Each time it has been reconstructed, the Bhutanese commitment to maintaining these structures reflecting their importance to national identity. Architecturally, Punikajang is exceptional, even by Bhutanese standards. Whitewashed walls rise from river boulders, wooden galleries feature intricate painted decorations. Towering central buildings house assembly halls, temples, and administrative offices. The location itself, on a narrow peninsula between two rivers, creates a natural moat that enhances defensive capabilities while providing aesthetic drama. Jacaranda trees bloom purple in spring, framing the Zhang in color that attracts photographers from around the world. The Fertility Temple in the Punica Valley, a small temple, attracts visitors for reasons quite different from typical Buddhist sites. Chimila Kong, the Fertility Temple, is associated with Drukpa Kunli, a 15th-century Buddhist master known as the Divine Madman. His unconventional teaching methods, which involved behavior that shocked contemporary observers, are celebrated in Bhutanese folklore. The temple has become a destination for couples seeking blessings for fertility. Visitors receive blessings from monks using a wooden phallus, a ritual that reflects both the particular traditions associated with Drukpa Kunli and broader themes of auspiciousness in Tantric Buddhism. Phallus imagery appears throughout Bhutan, painted on houses and displayed at corners of buildings. The openness with which Bhutan displays such imagery surprises many visitors from cultures with different attitudes toward sexuality. The Valley of Fertility, the Punika Valley, is known as the rice bowl of Bhutan. Its low elevation and reliable water, producing agricultural yields that surpass other regions. Terraced rice paddies climb the lower slopes of the surrounding hills. Water buffalo work the fields during planting season. Traditional farming methods persist alongside modest mechanization, introduced in recent decades. Red rice, a specialty of Bhutan, is cultivated extensively in Punika. This slightly nutty, nutritious grain appears in most Bhutanese meals and has become a specialty product, exported in small quantities to international markets. Walking through the valley during growing season offers sensory experiences distinct from the mountain landscapes that dominate Bhutan's image. The green of young rice plants, the sounds of running water, the smell of fertile earth, these ground the visitor in agricultural realities that have sustained Bhutanese civilization for centuries. Festivals of the Valley. Punika hosts one of Bhutan's most significant annual festivals, typically held in February or March according to the lunar calendar. The Punika Drubshan and Sechu commemorate historic events while providing occasions for religious observance and community celebration. Masked dances performed by monks and laypeople tell stories from Buddhist tradition and Bhutanese history. Spectators in their finest traditional dress crowd into the Zhang courtyard. For visitors fortunate enough to witness a festival, the experience offers access to living tradition rather than museum display. These are not performances staged for tourists, but genuine religious celebrations that would occur regardless of outside attention. The crowds, the costumes, the music, the incense. The centuries-old dances performed in settings that have hosted the same ceremonies for generations, all combine to create experiences that participants often describe as transformative. The tourism model. Bhutan's approach to tourism is unlike any other nation's. Rather than maximizing visitor numbers, Bhutan restricts access through pricing. A daily sustainable development fee, currently $200 per person per day, must be paid by all tourists. This fee covers accommodation in approved hotels, meals, transportation, and guide services, while also generating revenue for public services and conservation. The model aims to attract high-value, low-volume tourism that generates economic benefits without the environmental and cultural degradation associated with mass tourism. Proponents argue it has successfully preserved Bhutan's character while creating employment and income. Critics note that the high cost excludes travelers of modest means, creating a form of economic discrimination in access to cultural heritage. Some argue the restrictions benefit established tourism operators while limiting innovation and competition. The debate reflects broader questions about how small, culturally distinctive nations should engage with global tourism. Bhutan's model offers one answer, neither obviously right nor wrong, but worthy of consideration. Youth and change. For younger Bhutanese, the country's carefully managed development presents both opportunity and frustration. Education has expanded dramatically, with literacy rates rising from minimal levels a generation ago to approximately 70% today. Young Bhutanese increasingly pursue higher education, often abroad in India, Australia, or Western countries. Many return to find limited employment opportunities matching their qualifications. Government positions remain prestigious but scarce. Private sector development, while growing, cannot absorb all educated graduates. The result is emigration that worries policymakers concerned about brain drain. Meanwhile, global culture arrives through smartphones and internet connections. Young Bhutanese consume the same media as their peers worldwide, developing expectations and desires that may diverge from traditional values and limited material possibilities. The gross national happiness framework attempts to address these tensions, emphasizing that well-being comes from sources beyond material consumption. Whether this philosophy can satisfy young people exposed to global alternatives remains an open question. Environmental commitments. Bhutan's constitution mandates that at least 60% of the country remain under forest cover for all time. Currently, over 70% is forested, making Bhutan one of the most heavily forested nations in the world. The country is carbon negative, meaning its forests absorb more carbon dioxide than the nation emits. These achievements reflect both geography and policy. But deliberate choices have reinforced natural conditions, restricting logging, establishing protected areas, and prioritizing conservation over extraction. The challenges of maintaining these commitments while developing economically are significant. Hydroelectric power, sold primarily to India, provides Bhutan's main source of revenue. Expanding generation requires some environmental impact. Balancing energy development with conservation commitments tests the sustainability principles the nation espouses. The happiness question: does gross national happiness actually make Bhutanese people happy? The question is surprisingly difficult to answer. Surveys show that most Bhutanese report satisfaction with their lives, and the country typically ranks well on international happiness indices. But methodological questions about cross-cultural comparison complicate interpretation. Mental health challenges exist but remain stigmatized and underaddressed. Alcohol consumption is high by regional standards. Youth suicide rates have drawn concern. These realities complicate simple narratives about happiness as national achievement. What seems clear is that Bhutan has attempted something unusual, making explicit the values that should guide development and governance. Whether happiness is the right goal, whether it can be measured meaningfully, whether government policy can actually influence it, these questions have no easy answers. But asking them publicly, building institutional frameworks around them, and subjecting policy to their scrutiny represents an experiment worth observing, whatever conclusions one ultimately draws. In the heart of the Himalayas, where mountain peaks pierce the clouds and prayer flags carry aspirations on the wind, a small kingdom continues its remarkable experiment. Bhutan is not a paradise. It faces poverty, emigration, and the tensions between tradition and change that affect all societies in our interconnected age. Its happiness framework, for all its appeal, cannot insulate its people from the challenges of modern existence. But Bhutan represents something valuable precisely because it is imperfect. It demonstrates that alternatives exist. That a nation can consciously choose to prioritize preservation over development, well-being over wealth, sustainability over growth. That doing so creates different problems but also different possibilities. The tiger's nest clings to its cliff, not because the rock is invincible but because generation after generation chose to rebuild, to maintain, to continue the tradition of devotion in that impossible location. Pajongs stand because communities invested in their preservation. The forests remain because policy protected them. These are choices. They could have been made differently. They can still be changed. Bhutan's greatest teaching may not be happiness itself, but the demonstration that societies can deliberately shape their trajectories, that the future is not simply something that happens, but something that humans collectively create through the choices they make and the values they prioritize. The last Shangri-La is not a hidden valley free from problems. It is a small nation wrestling with the same forces that affect every society, but doing so with unusual intentionality and remarkable openness to questions that other nations rarely ask. What should a country maximize? What does progress actually mean? How should ancient traditions and modern possibilities be balanced? What do we owe to future generations? Bhutan has not answered these questions, but it has made them central to national discourse in ways that challenge visitors to consider their own societies, and the experiment will continue, observed by a world increasingly uncertain about its own directions. Thank you for joining us throughout today's journey on Travel Vibes. The last Shangri-La awaits, not as escape from the world, but as invitation to imagine it differently.